Welcome back to Friends of the Facts. This is day 3, and we're starting it off here with a session titled, What are deepfakes and how to spot them? And I'm sitting here with Scott Christianson, an expert really on deepfakes and the technology behind it. First off, let's just start right off with what is a deepfake? Let's get right into it.
So a deepfake is a synthetic representation of a person, that person being either a real person or just looks like a person or sounds like a person. It is generated by a computer, and it's generally using a technology we call artificial intelligence or machine learning to learn how certain people speak or to learn how certain people look, and then to predict how they would look or sound doing some new action that they've never done before. And this can be very useful for things like editing. So podcasters use audio deepfakes, if you will, or at least this same sort of technology to make edits to their podcasts, where maybe they told somebody, show up next Wednesday, and it was really next Thursday, and they can go in and edit that audio without having to re-record it. So it's some pretty amazing stuff that can be done with this, but unfortunately it can also be used for bad purposes.
Certainly. As someone with a film background, I fancy myself someone who can spot, when I feel like I'm being fooled by a video or something. But this is a little worrisome to me because it feels like it's very much a double-edged sword. It could be both for good, but also for very bad. And how do we navigate that, I suppose?
I think that's very difficult because if you remember when email first came about, we started to see phishing scams, spelled with a PH, that would try to scam you out of money by sending you a fake email. It's pretty easy to detect those now, but that's what, 30 years on from when email first started becoming widespread? Well, same sort of thing is happening where you could audio deepfake myself sounding like I was in distress, calling you saying, I need some help, can you please wire me $100 or Venmo me $100? So there's all sorts of ways that this could be used in much the same way as we see email phishing scams. We might be seeing telephone or audio phishing scams.
And that was, we have a video on our portal. It's about a 45-minute video of you kind of giving a lecture on this, and I watched it, and you mentioned that in the video, and that was really interesting to me, that the thought that this could really elevate scams.
Right.
The example that you gave is if you're traveling somewhere and you call your parent and, oh no, Mom, I've been in a car accident, send money.
Right.
And they can literally duplicate your voice.
Right.
So the thought that I had was, do I need to go have a conversation with my parents and create a keyword?
Yes.
Like, hey, if I'm truly in trouble and you're really talking to me, I'm going to say pineapple.
Right.
Yes. I'm going to say something that only I would know. Is that something to do?
So I think that's something that would be a good idea, because what we're seeing right now is these audio phishing scams or deepfakes are targeted at high net worth or high value targets. So the CFO of a company may get a call that sounds like it's from the CEO saying, hey, I just closed a deal, we need to transfer $1 million of earnest money, here's the account to transfer it to. So there have actually been tens of millions of dollars that have been scammed in this way. So it takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of technology, a lot of expertise, but just like every technology, this gets easier and easier to use, right? And so we would start to see it come down to more, if you will, ordinary folks, right? So people that might be targeted. And if you could get 3 or 4 people to send you money in a day, that's probably, a good day's salary, right?
You just made your whole annual salary.
Right.
And this is really happening. This
Yes.
is not sci-fi. This
Yes.
is not fake. This is happening.
Right.
Millions of dollars get stolen. It's a thing.
Right.
And I think a lot of people might not even realize that we're already at that point.
Yeah, so it's moving very quickly. So technology tends to improve at an exponential rate, so it goes very, very fast. We're not good at thinking about things in terms of exponentials. So we tend to think, oh, well, I get a little bit better every day. I don't get significant, double my capacity every day. And so that's what computers do. And so, yeah, you're exactly right that we're thinking about these audio scams, not only for financial, but you can imagine the implications for a journalism student that may think they're talking with the president of the university right now, and the president has just said something very, unusual and controversial, and now we're going to print that because I talked to Dr. Choi. Well, turns out you didn't. Okay, so you can imagine this being used for all sorts of nefarious purposes, not just financial but political as well.
Are there techniques or skills that a layperson could develop to spot these things? Because I think you mentioned in the video that there is software that can go in and I think kind of look at the metadata within a video, within a piece of media that can tell you if it's been tampered with or altered. Is there a method for someone like me? I don't have access to programs like that.
Well, I think it's just common sense stuff. So just like when you get a scam call from, this is Citibank, you don't answer that, right? You hang up and you call Citibank. Did you all call me? Right? So you are validating that that is in fact the person. So if I got a call that sounded like it was from the president of the university, I would say, hey, I'm going to call you right back, or I'm going to walk over to your office. And now I actually know that I have called a number that is associated with that person, and it doesn't just look like I've received a call from that person. So I think it's the common sense stuff that, frankly, we're so busy nowadays, sometimes we skip it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I think maybe just for any viewers watching right now, let's maybe look at an example, because it's pretty incredible how good these look, frankly, like that we're in person. We have one that was pretty popular online, the Obama and Jordan Peele
this
video.
This is from quite a while ago,
Okay.
so you'll notice some artifacts in here, and I think you'll be able to detect that maybe this isn't quite authentic.
Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at that video and see if you can see what we're talking about, some of the artifacts within the video.
This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet.
Okay.
Yeah, so right there. So can you tell me what maybe some of those artifacts
It's kind
would
of
be?
blurry around his face. It's not in focus the way his hair is and other aspects of his features. So that's where the kind of alteration is happening. So you see this with like face swapping apps that you might have on your phone, where they are basically doing this kind of swap. But in here they're trying to actually make it look like the lips are moving like Obama would move his lips. And at the time, this is about 3 years ago, it took a lot of computing power to be able to calculate this. And in fact, computers could tell you right away that this is in fact a deep fake.
Okay. And so, right, to us watching this video, we see, you can kind of tell, it's just off that he's, the mouth doesn't match, it just looks just a little off. What if somebody confused that though for like, oh, it's a poor internet connection?
Yes, exactly.
So are there multiple filters then? Like, oh, maybe it's a poor internet connection. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I should look deeper. Like, what are some of those steps maybe that a person could go through?
Yeah, so it's it's fairly difficult. And also, let's say that Obama was saying something that confirm my beliefs. We have something called the confirmation bias, so we tend not to question it, right? So if Obama said something entirely contrary to his character, we might question it. But I think it's kind of checking our beliefs at some point as well, because that's where we fall into a lot of these traps, as we see something that is quote unquote fake news or is not a fact, but it influences us because it confirms what we would like to believe. And that's a big problem for all of us. And so even though a deepfake video may be detected technically, it may still serve its purpose, right? It may get the supporters of that political view on board, and it's confirming what they believe. So there's also something called the liar's dividend. So
yes, I want to talk about that definitely. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about that. The liar's dividend. So the way that I felt that you presented it was almost like a way to skirt blame, because when people can disbelieve everything they see, then you can deny everything, right? So the example I think you gave was something to the effect of like a politician, right? And the politician says something not good.
Right.
And then people go to that politician and say, you said this. And the politician can say, that was not me. That was a deep fake.
It was the deep fake. And you see the politicians already done that. It's fake news. It's not real. And so that gives their supporters something to cling to, right? So that's what we call the liar's dividend, that the liar is benefiting from this technology being out there, that they can say, oh no, that was a deep faked video. I did not say that I hated hedgehogs. I in fact love hedgehogs. And so you can benefit from this distrust, right? So this distrust this is sowing in our systems.
And so I want to look at, we have another video that I want to show. It's of a deep fake of Tom Cruise. And I think that this one's really incredible because we watched the Obama Jordan Peele video, and you said that took about 30 people about 3 years ago to make.
Right.
Now, fast forward, this is a more recent video, and this video took one person to make.
Right. About 24 hours.
About 24 hours. So this is another deep fake that took less time and less people. Let's go ahead and take a look at it.
I'm gonna show you some magic. It's the real thing. I mean, it's all the real thing.
So yeah, that's not actually Tom Cruise.
Right. That's an actor that is pretty good at playing Tom Cruise, so he has a lot of the mannerisms. So it's really just the face that had to be deep faked or swapped. But, very hard for us, certainly, to detect. And once again, this technology becomes kind of democratized. Just like we have a supercomputer in our cell phones, well, that supercomputer can start to be used for other things. And so that technology is going to become more and more democratized and available to many.
One of the things that you touched on in the video as well that worried me, really, was that 96% of deepfakes on the web are pornographic.
Right.
And that this is very much a weapon that can be used against women, against, anyone that, a person may not like. It's a weapon. But against journalists, against anybody that, somebody wants to go after. That's a problem. 96% of deepfakes.
Right, and there have been, so this is non-consensual pornography where usually a face of a known person is swapped onto that of a pornographic actor. And you're right, there's all sorts of things, just intimidation of people that ex-girlfriends. It's always a crime against women as far as I can tell. And this can have devastating mental health effects for the people that are attacked in this way, for journalists that are having to flee, sometimes in other countries where they might be in physical danger because of this. So it's a big problem, and some legislators have proposed that the use of deep fakes should be included as kind of a hate crime. So how do we take the production of this into our judicial system, which always lacks behind technology.
Which is far behind, right?
Yes,
the
yes.
law is far behind the technology. I think about also the damage to a person's reputation. A lot
Yes.
of, because once the cat is out of the bag, how do you really go back and undo it? Even though it wasn't even you.
Right.
A lot of times that can be really hard to work backward.
Yes. Well, we're kind of trained, once we hear something to have a little bit of a bias, right? So if you hear that, Scott steals people's potatoes out of their front yard, and
How dare you?
yes, I know, he's always doing that. Can you believe it? Okay, and you hear this a bunch of times. We know it's a lie, but the next time that you're around me, you might be like, oh, let's not put the good silverware out, for Scott's coming over. So there, you put a little bias in your brain. Now that probably helped us a lot, hundreds of years ago, where we may have encountered something, and it allows us to make some very quick decisions about stuff, but it doesn't really help us in today's environment.
So, I got my notes here. So let's see. I asked these questions. I'm just going through my questions here, my little notebook. So let's see. To me, too, I wrote this down. The term deep fake has kind of a sinister tone to it But as we've discussed, we haven't really discussed much, but there are positive applications. Let's talk about some of the positives, because we can, there is good here, and I do want to recognize that.
Yeah, so some of the technology can be used to create translations. So let's say that I wanted to be able to welcome scholars that were fleeing Ukraine to the University of Missouri. I don't speak Ukrainian or any other similar languages from Eastern Europe. We could do a deep fake, and I could say, hi, I'm Scott Christianson. I want to welcome you to our campus, and do it in that native language. So there's a lot of interesting things that you could do. This can also be used for translation of film. So there's several companies that are doing this, where they're actually being able to take Tom Hanks and translate, if you will, his movies, so there's not that lip syncing error that you see sometimes when it's been dubbed over into a different language. So yeah, I think for film production, there's lots of things you can do. You can make sure that people remain anonymous. So if I was wanting to talk with you as a person that has maybe been a victim of a crime, you might blur my face out and have some really distorted voice. Instead, you might be able to do a deep fake. So you can see my expressions, and you can see my anguish when I'm talking about what happened to me. And so there's some interesting uses of this technology to conceal identity in a good way.
Which, the first thing that came to my mind was Welcome to Chechnya, the documentary film that came out not long ago, where it was about persecuted LGBTQ men trying to flee persecution in Chechnya for being gay, I believe. I have actually not seen the movie, but I have been told that's and I am told there's a reveal in it where at the end, suddenly there's a wipe and you see his face change, and that's the reveal that all along you were watching a deep fake.
Right, exactly. So concealing the identities of those folks, once again, so the empathy is there, because it's hard to empathize with a face that's been blotched out, and that deep voice that you hear, sometimes that synthetic voice. So I think that's a great use of this technology, especially for reporters and journalists that are working in these countries where revealing your source may mean that source is dead.
Right. I think another really crazy concept that we haven't talked about yet is like the right to your image, and post-mortem.
Yes.
Do you have the right to your own image, or can people just be I guess that's not the question. The question is, or I guess the thought is, even after you've passed away, people could easily make deep fakes and you're
Yeah,
you could exist still.
How do you build in that protection into contracts, for example? So you have a contract of some sort to be an anchor, and well, there's lots of video and audio of you, so we could certainly make a deep fake. What happens when your contract ends? Could we still have you reading the news for the next 200 years?
But not pay me.
But not pay you? So what rights do you have to your image, not just in this particular usage, but in perpetuity? And so that's an interesting question. When I ask my students, sometimes the students say, well, I don't care if somebody resurrects me as a deep fake 100 years from now, and other people say, no, it's creepy. I think that once again, the law is kind of catching up to this. And there's been some good work by some lawyers in Great Britain that have started to look at this with actors in their contracts, because we have seen actors that have been deep faked. So in Rogue One, which was a Star Wars movie, there was an actor that was deep faked, Peter Cushing, because he had passed away. And so I don't know if that was done within the context of the rights that he signed in the 1970s. Right. I'm kind of doubting it, that even anybody imagined that technology would be around. So maybe they just did it, or they paid his estate or something like that.
That would be interesting to know. Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, that's very cool to me, because the magic of movies, it's just another tool in the toolbox for these magic of movies. I guess my question, so let's say I wanted to make a deep fake. Is there something on my phone? Like how,
It's still a good amount of work, especially for a video deepfake.
Okay.
If you are wanting to make an audio deepfake, there are commercial programs that are used for things like podcasting, like Descript, and you basically upload a lot of audio of yourself. And
just any audio recording clips of my voice? Okay.
Yeah, so I did this, and I took a bunch of audio recording clips from my lectures, which I guess must be kind of boring because the deep fake I made of myself sounded kind of boring. But I uploaded that and it chewed on it for about 3 days and said, okay, now I can reproduce your voice. And so you could then type something in and it will actually make or predict what that audio would sound like if Scott was saying it.
Wow. Okay. So the computer has to process it for
Right.
a period of time, which I assume it's just running through crazy amounts of images and, from
Right,
every
right.
angle. And so it basically learns the face of this person.
It's kind of interesting because usually, especially with video, it's two AIs that are working against each other. There's one that is generating an image, and there's one that is what's called a discriminator that is saying, oh, that does look like Tom Cruise, or that doesn't look like Tom Cruise.
How does it do that? That's crazy.
The two AIs work together, and they do this millions of times, a minute, and so it gets better and better very quickly.
Wow. Computers, man.
Computers,
right.
man.
No, that's, I think it's, it's crazy to me. I was watching that video of David Beckham of how he was giving a PSA on malaria, I believe.
Yeah.
And they had him say it in English, which is his native language. Right. And then all of a sudden, it just kept wiping across the screen. It was like him speaking in Spanish, him speaking in Italian. Like,
Right.
it was crazy. And his lips were matching what he was saying.
Yes.
So, I was fancying myself like, ooh, I could look like I speak all these languages.
Yes, yes.
Know how to elevate myself.
Well, you could also imagine it with something like that to, once again, help people that are coming to a country, refugees, being able to update instructions to refugees. And instead of having to hire a bunch of actors, you can just have the AI redo the video.
Cool. Let's talk about the legalities of all this and what that might be in the future. Should there be a push for legislation to legislate this? Obviously we're in the wild, wild west of it right now because there is no regulations. What's that like? Should this be regulated somehow?
Yeah, so that's very interesting because you start to even get into areas like if you were to call a restaurant to make a reservation, what if that wasn't somebody picking up the phone, but it was in fact an AI that was talking to you? So what right do you have to know that something is a computer and it's not real? So there's a lot of interesting things there, but I think certainly we have to make the production of non-consensual pornography a crime that is severely punished and needs to be prosecuted because I think that does have the potential to die out if there are serious consequences for people that do this. I think we need to start thinking about how we make our telecommunications more secure. I'm sure you get tons of scam phone calls, yes. Right? So how do we really authenticate this is Scott Christianson calling you and not somebody that has faked his number? And so this is something the FCC is looking at. How do we redo some of our communication systems? Because the internet, our telephone system, was built for communicating, not for secure communication, right? So it's often band-aided onto that. So, and there was, a couple other examples that I think you and I have talked about where there was the mayor of Berlin thought she was talking with the mayor of Kiev in Ukraine, or Kyiv, and it was not. It was somebody that was deep faking that, right? Mm-hmm. So you can imagine the implications for something like that. Right. So our politicians have got to get more sophisticated about authenticating each other.
Definitely. That's at the highest levels of government. This is fooling people. Right. That's worrisome. That they've been the victim of falling for a deep fake.
Yeah. And I think platforms like Facebook, they'll probably do a very good job of detecting deepfakes because they're going to see them early on, but it's really this kind of individualized deepfake that's going to be very dangerous, I think.
The more insidious kind of snuck up on you, wasn't expecting it. Yeah.
Right. So.
Have you ever been the victim of any sort of AI or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
No. That's a good point. Because I guess thinking about all these ethical implications and just basically what the future of this is. I'm a little worried by it, frankly. How do you feel about
Yeah, I think
that?
we're entering a dangerous time for a lot of different reasons that many other people have talked about at this conference as well. But I think, we need to get back to a little more of assuming good intentions of others and not allowing ourselves to be tricked into our confirmation bias all the time. I think there's a lot of things that are going to be difficult for us to do in this dangerous time. So I wish I had a great answer that all you need to do is turn this setting on and you will never have problems with deepfakes again. But unfortunately, that's not the case.
Yeah, I wish it was, because then as I've been talking to all the presenters here throughout this Friends of the Facts, a resounding thing I keep hearing is, oh, we still have to trust. We still have to, you can't just not believe anything, right?
Right.
And it's hard because I want to believe my eyes, but here we are talking about, no, you can't always believe your eyes. And so how do we reach a place of healthy skepticism with anything we see? Even with a video, I know if my parents or grandparents saw one of those videos, they had no question that was Tom Cruise,
Right.
So how do we stay vigilant, I guess, and what do we do, I guess, to stay positive and to trust some things, but stay vigilant?
Well, I think slowing down is one. I realize this may not sound good talking to somebody that's going to be a broadcast anchor, but I don't watch broadcast news, okay? Because
Wow.
I want to slow things down. I will read the paper. I don't want to, be too excited about the news.
Yeah.
That sounds a little bit odd, but as someone that probably tries to generate a little excitement about the news, but slowing things down, talking to people you might not normally talk to, that you might disagree with. I think a lot of these platforms, we feel kind of anonymous behind the screens, and so we're willing to be quick to judgment, quick to say, well, that person's bad. Well, maybe you just disagree about this one thing. Maybe that person's heart is in the right place. They have different motivations. So I think that's one of the problems that I've seen that over my time is that, in the Reagan, I remember Reagan and Tip O'Neill were political opponents, but they would, go out and have a meal at the end of the day because they would argue about the issues, but they didn't believe that each other were bad people. And so I think that that's where we've kind of associated ideas we disagree with those people must be bad or malicious. Okay, and I think we really have to break that because that's not true. That's frankly just not true. We might have different ways to approach a problem. So I've gone way away from the technology, but frankly, I think that's part of it.
Well, you started as a tech person doing technology, like your background is you're well versed in technology stuff. Can you walk me through what the change in technology that you've seen in your career and what that could mean for even the future?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because when I was a young kid, I was lucky enough that my parents saved up and they helped me get something called an Apple IIe. And so this was in the 80s. And it was really cool because it was kind of like Steve Jobs' Envision, this bicycle for the mind. You created stuff on it. You wrote your own programs, and you could kind of understand what was happening in it, right? I would be hard-pressed to say much about how my iPhone works, right? I mean, it generally works, but I don't know everything with it, and I consume things with it. I don't create things, and so I think that's one of the big changes. So we're not creating our own little blogs and having our little 10 people that we're talking to. Instead, we're on these massive walled gardens. So our walled garden here of Facebook. Okay, so it's controlled by one platform, and these AIs that are in Facebook, these artificial intelligence algorithms, are amplifying things that will get people's attention rather than letting them find them organically. And so that's one of the things that I miss a lot is the tinkering and the doing your own writing on these places outside that are not controlled by one particular platform. So the platformification of the internet has been something that's happened, probably since 2007. There's been a major shift.
Definitely. And it's been exponential. I think I don't think we ever clarified exactly, but computer technology advances, it doubles its capabilities every 2 years.
Yeah, that's generally known as Moore's Law. That's slowing down a bit, but there's other things that are kind of extending that and keeping it going faster and faster.
It's incredible. Is there anything that you feel like I maybe haven't touched on yet that we should go over? I feel like we've talked about pretty much every angle of this, but I don't know if I missed anything.
No, I think that's a really good summary, and I think that it's all kind of tied together. So distrust, media, trust, deepfakes, walled gardens, all this is kind of tied together in a way that's hard for us to understand and to be clear about sometimes. And so I just think we have to engage.
And any words of advice to leave the viewers with of how to look out for this?
Yeah, I would say, especially for the older people in your family, talk to them about scams. My mom gets these Dear Grandma calls, and these are not deep fakes. These are just people calling that say, Grandma, I was in an accident. I don't know what happened. I'm in jail. Can you send me some money? Well, she knows that's not, a relative, and so she's smart enough to hang up. But there are people that are scammed every day here in our city. And it's, a couple $100 here, a couple $100 here, there, and it adds up for the scammers. But, it's not just these advanced technologies, it's everything. And you need to talk to your family about internet security, about phishing scams, about, scams that come through the phone, and help them protect themselves.
Definitely. This is online safety. This is digital safety.
Yes.
The example I think of is my dad was a firefighter, and growing up, he would always make sure we knew the route out of the house in case the house was on fire. So now it's kind of my job. I need to go to my parents and my family and tell them, hey, this is things you need to be aware of when you're in the digital world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Scott, for talking with me today. We do have more sessions later on today. At 11 o'clock today, we have how to cultivate digital wellness, and that's with IREX, which we've been talking about IREX.
Yeah.
So they're talking about digital wellness. And then at 3 o'clock today, we also have teaching media and news literacy beyond the classroom. So
excellent.
We've got them coming still today. So hopefully y'all can join us still. And thank you so much, Scott, for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
Thank you. And I'm Taylor Freeman signing off, and we'll see you later.